Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're having a look at another user model, and this is the Panhard ERC 90 Sagaie. It was also made by DanPogan, who was the creator of another wonderful model we looked at earlier, which is the BM Oplot. And this machine is of French design. It has a really interesting history and could come definitely in the future of War Thunder. At the start of this video, I also want to say that there is a Russia Day special going on, and all you have to do over the weekend is play 3 battles with an activity of 60% or higher with Soviet vehicles of rank 2 or higher, and you can get yourself the Heart of Russia decal. So make sure to get that. It looks really nice, and obviously always nice to get something brand new. So into the vehicle itself. The story of this vehicle starts with a familiar vehicle that you may be used to, which is the AML 90, which we already have in the game in the French tree. Basically, the AML 90, being a small, 4-wheeled vehicle developed in the 1960s, was a big hit on the export market and also proved itself in battle. It had a few issues though, against certain enemies. Its low pressure 90mm was not great against most MBTs, but at close range it was alright at dealing with weak spots. Because of this fact, they were looking to improve the gun on the vehicle, and this would mean adding a larger gun, which would have access to a higher velocity round. The army, the French army at the time, left a requirement for a replacement for the AML 90, and this would be attached to the concept of an armed reconnaissance vehicle, which would have 6 wheels instead of 2 and would have heavier firepower. The design teams at Panhard decided to take up the challenge, and both the ERC and also VCR were developed from the same chassis, which is the 6-wheeled one that you see here. ERC stands for Engine à Roues Canon, which is the gun-armed wheeled vehicle, and it shared many components with the VCR, mainly down to the fact that they wanted it to be a bit more efficient when it came to the cost of production. And with the 6-wheeled configuration, the idea was that it would give a much more stable chassis compared to the 4-wheeled one which was used previously, and also it meant that it could still travel even with a wheel destroyed. The same thing happened as well with other vehicles, and also it came with the added bonus of being able to mount a heavier gun. There were 2 main versions of the ERC built. One was a cheaper light reconnaissance variant, which was the Lynx, and then you had the Sagaie, which means spear in French, and this was the tank destroyer version. It was armed with a longer barrel 90mm f4, and this is the one that we see in this mission. The first prototype was delivered in 1977 and was based on the VCR and had the Saviem f3 90mm turret. The Lynx was the first variant made of the ERC-90 before the Sagaie, with the Lynx being around in 1977 and the Sagaie being around in 1979. Basically, the Lynx version was very similar to the AML that they had previously created. What it had access to is the Panhard AML late turret, which was called the Hispano-Suiza Lynx 90. And this model was large enough for the commander and also gunner, and had access to a main low-velocity CN90 F1 90mm tank gun. Also had access to a coaxial 7.62mm and an AA-mounted machine gun on the top of it. Argentina was the first to order this vehicle. They ordered 36 vehicles to be delivered to the Marines for patrols along the border of Chile, and Iraq also was one of the first potential customers as well, with the idea to mount the UTM 800 turret on it. This was unfortunately never realized, and instead the F3 turret was mounted on the Lynx instead. The Sagaie variant, which was coming in later, was designed to have much more firepower and therefore be able to deal with current MBTs at the time. it was decided to adopt the new F4CN90 main smoothbore cannon. This was made by Cockerell in Belgium. It was housed in the GIAT TS90 turret, and obviously with a larger gun generally meant larger rounds, so its carrying capacity for ammunition was reduced to 20 longer rounds. The muzzle velocity of the gun, though, was much higher, and therefore it was able to actually fire APFS-DS ammunition. This was a big upgrade over the previous 90mm the French were using, which could only fire Heat FS. It was also found capable to penetrate most MBTs from the 1950 to 1970 generation at 2,000 meters, and the gunner sights also had access to a laser rangefinder, which was another large improvement, and the gun also adopted the muzzle brake from the late AMX-13 gun. The French army decided to evaluate the ERC-90 Sagaie from 1978 to 1980, and it was accepted into service in 1980 in the later half of the year, but still it continued with trials into 1982. It also was decided that they were going to modernize the machines from 2005 to 2009. Once they were still in service, 162 out of the 192 which were in service at the time. The main focus was to provide a better power-to-weight ratio and also a greater range for the vehicle. So they decided to add in an additional German MTU diesel 170 horsepower engine, which with a new gearbox and also ranked transmission gave it a power-to-weight ratio of 18.7 horsepower per ton, a top speed of 95 kilometers an hour, and also a range of 800 kilometers. There was also a few other ideas to modernize the product as well. There are still 100 of these vehicles labeled as active in the French military, showing their use in general times. There was also a few other variants built of this vehicle, one being the EMC-91. This was a fire support version designed with an 81mm mortar, which I think sounds pretty fun. There was also the ERC-20, which was a variant with anti-aircraft capabilities in the form of two 20mm autocannons. These right now are used by the Gabonese army. There was also the ERC-6020, which gave it a 60mm mortar and also a 20mm autocannon, an ERC-90 diesel, which was just a test with a diesel engine, and also the Sagaie 2, which was actually past the developers a little bit ago, which was an improved version of the Sagaie. It had access to a better power, the same power plant as the VAB, which was two Peugeot XD3T 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel 98 horsepower engines, and Gabon actually purchased 6 of these, and another twin engine prototype was also tested using Peugeot PRV V6 engines. So basically just a little bit more oomph in the engine department. So the ERC-90 would be a great vehicle to add to War Thunder. Along with all of the other light vehicles we have in the French tech tree, it gives the French tech tree a unique experience compared to many others. Having small vehicles with not a ton of armor but very high firepower makes them incredibly fun to play as scout vehicles. And one of the issues that scouts have in general when it comes to War Thunder is normally their armament is a little bit less powerful compared to some of their vehicles at the BRs that they're at, mainly because of the fact that they are generally supposed to be more scouts. And with the ERC-90 and also others such as the Mars being added more recently, you can see that with France they do have access to this more powerful set of armaments at the BRs that they find themselves at, and also can do the scouting role as well. This to me is a really nice setup. I'm really happy with the fact that France is getting some of their really cool and interesting light vehicles, and with the addition of the AML-90, I feel the ERC-90 would also be one to see in the future, whether it be an event vehicle, which this thing would be great for, whether it be a tech tree vehicle or even a premium vehicle. Hopefully you can see in this video that there is a bunch of different variants they could chuck in, and therefore at least expand the French tech tree going forward. Not everything is always about high-ranking stuff, and for me, when it comes to France, it is one of my favorite tech trees because of the fact that through the mid-tiers, rank 3 and 4 and now 2 specifically, it is incredibly fun to play. And the ERC90 would just add to that wonderful list of French vehicles, which are already great to play. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.